The pick is in.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have made a selection in the 2024 NHL Draft. I'm Rachel. I'm joined by Mike DiStefano of Locked On Leafs to break down the Leafs selecting Ben Danford in the NHL Draft. And what a pick.
Yeah, I mean, they traded out of their pick at 23. The two players that Dave and I have been talking about that we were kind of eyeing on the Locked On Leafs podcast was Stian Solberg, who did go at pick 23 when they traded that selection. And then the other player was EJ Emery, who ended up getting picked at number 30 by the Rangers, right ahead of the Leafs pick right there. So they end up going with Ben Danford. From everything that I've read and everything that I've heard about Ben Danford, he's a good, steady two-way defenseman, really, really, capable of playing in his own end, responsible, loves to block shots, really good skater. And here's the thing: the Maple Leafs last year, a lot of people looked at their draft pick and said, "Oh, Easton Cowan, that's a bit of a reach for someone of his stature." Well, he ended up winning MVP in the OHL in the regular season and in the playoffs this year. So, I tend to trust what the Maple Leafs scouting staff are doing. They've done a pretty good job when it comes to drafting over the last couple of years. So I think Ben Danford will be a decent pick for them.
Yeah, and the Oshawa Generals, where he played or still plays, had a pretty successful season. Do you think that had like a big part of it as well?
I mean, it definitely helps, right? You've got a guy who went to an OHL final, right? He was able to play against some of the top talent in the OHL. You got a chance to watch him, play again, those big playoff games. And that certainly, I would imagine, is something that they really liked. I know last year that was big when they made their selection of Easton Cowan, and even a couple years before that, Matthew Nyes. They liked what he was able to
Right.
do down the stretch and into the playoffs. So it does seem to be a philosophy that Wes Clark, their head of scouting, really leans on is how well these players, the second half of their season, and then what do they do in the playoffs when it really matters in their draft year. And for everything that I've seen, it looks like they were pretty pleased with what they saw at Ben Danford.
What do you think the assignment is here for the Leafs in this draft, given how their season turned out?
Well, I think they knew that they needed to address the blue line. You take a look at what they've got in terms of prospect pipeline, and there's not a whole lot of them. Not a lot of defensemen that scream top four, that scream, defensively responsible. They've got a couple of players that might, be third pair guys in the NHL, but there might be a bit of a higher ceiling to Danford. So I think they really wanted to make sure that they came out of the first round with a defenseman that they like, that has some size, that can skate, that plays physical, that they can rely on in the defensive end. And that kind of checks all of those boxes. And they're able to pick up another draft pick too, right? They traded from 23 down to 31, got Danford, and then they also added another selection late in the second round, which I think will come in handy for this squad.
Sounds like it. Well, for more on this pick and the rest of the NHL draft for the Toronto Maple Leafs, tune in to Locked On Leafs here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.